Okay. We are live and recording. There we go. Uh, it is a very good day to talk about the philosophy of sports because the world is like captured by this Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight, which will be a pretty good kind of place to start talking about the philosophy of sports. My name is Seth Tower Hurd. I am a communications consultant, podcaster, writer, etc. Jordan Goldstein joins me from Canada, but not much longer. So you're going to be your family is relocating to the Chicago area coming up, right? Which we were
Yes,
just talking
sir.
about.
Yeah, January 2025 will be arriving. Pretty excited about a brand new adventure for me and my family.
And oddly enough, a milder winter, which is not something you can normally say if you're moving to Chicago.
Yeah, we're moving south because we live in rural Ontario, about 70 miles northwest of the city of Toronto.
Yeah,
So moving from one side of the Great Lakes to the other.
yeah.
Just
I by the way, I really love Toronto. I've also never met a group of people who assumed I was as stupid as when I engaged with French Canadians in Toronto.
Yeah, Canada's a funky place. Very funky place. The best way I could describe Canada is everything South Park ever did with Canada is 1,000% accurate. We basically have like square tires on our cars, and we have one road, and we have one road, right? Like it's about the best. It's about the best I've ever seen our country accurately represented, and what it feels like to live here sometimes.
Yeah, I think Toronto's a really cool city. I'd like to take my family to Montreal at some point just because it's the only walled city in North America, correct?
That's Quebec City.
Quebec City. Okay. Oh, gosh dang it.
Montreal,
Sorry. Now I just look like an ethnocentric American, huh? I,
nah.
I
Montreal,
was up
Montreal
there.
is the place.
So I got up there I was up there in sixth grade. My uncle got married up there. And, I would explain to people, they're like, where are you from? I'm like, well, my family farms about 3 hours from Chicago. Right. And then they'd be like, a couple of the French people I met, they're like, have you ever been to a big city before? No. I live 3 hours from Chicago and I've never seen a gas station. Like, you realize I'm not Amish, right? Like, we're on the subway, so I'm probably not Amish. You're a former history professor. You kind of do your own thing now. We're going to talk about the philosophy of sports. By the way, it's the Idea podcast. Our thing got messed up, so I can't refrain if introduced it correctly. What I think is so interesting about what you're doing is there's this weird kind of anger online about like watching sports at all. I'm like, well, that's not helpful. Like, oh my gosh, why are you watching these guys when you could go be doing self-improvement or something like that? Which is kind of the same red pill accounts. So like, why would you ever do anything that makes you happy? Why would you watch a movie? Why would you drink coffee? Can't you just like be strong on your own? I'm like, your weird brand of legalism is not very much fun. So first of all, how did you get into, because this is such a good topic and I just haven't seen anybody else do it. So how did you start to kind of put this together of kind of the classic Greek and Roman, and kind of Mediterranean literature and ideas that built the West? Were very into sports. And a lot of times they get just mischaracterized as purely toxic or a waste of time or something like that. Now, you're the first person I've seen push back against that. So how did you get there?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. As you mentioned, I used to be a history prof, and I was that history student, like in undergrad, who wanted to take every single history course in in any era, in any location. I just tried to take as many different courses as I could because I just really wanted to try to understand the breadth and the depth of the human experience across time. Right? I wanted the 30,000-foot view of the history of effectively humanity. And so I've always just gravitated towards the past. I've always gravitated towards narrative. And as a Canadian who grew up loving sport, and in particular, like loving ice hockey, I was always drawn to the strong connection that people had to what we might call like a national sport. Right.
Yeah.
So in America, it's like, why do you guys love baseball? Historically and like contemporarily, why is football the biggest American export in the world, maybe other than bombs? Um, so, and I've always been intrigued by that connection between a group of people in a particular sport. And so, as a historian wanting to become a prof, when you enter into a PhD, you really have to narrow down onto something that you're really, really interested in, because you're about to do a deep dive for the next, 4 years into this subject. And I was always just driven by this question, like, why ice hockey? Why Canadian national identity? Why so strong? Like, up in Canada, I kind of made the joke like that South Park represents us, but there's a really deep truth about Canadian national identity, and that we don't have a positive sense of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like, when you ask a Canadian, what does it mean to be Canadian? They will point you to things like, we're not this, we're not that. So it's always a negative, or they'll point to things that other people also have. They'll be like, whoa, we have universal health care. And it's like, yeah, well, so does everybody in Western Europe. What's your point? Like, that
Yeah.
doesn't make us unique. That's not a nationality, and nationality is not policy, right? So the one thing, and this really just stuck out to me in one of my first classes as a PhD student, one of my professors said it to me about hockey. Hockey is the one thing in the world that Canadians invented, Canadians are the best in the world at, and that everybody else in the world knows that we also invented it and that we're the best at it. It's the
Interesting.
one thing. It's the one thing. And people sort of, like, as you said initially, they'll think, well, that's silly. What kind of a country do you have if that's the only thing you have? And maybe they're right, but
Yeah.
then I got to think, like, maybe that is actually really powerful. Maybe that is deep. Maybe there's something really positive, that we're a country that effectively can only positively identify ourselves by sport. And that made me want to drive down into the genesis of, like, when did this thing actually start? And so that led me to research the donation of what's now known as the Stanley Cup, which
Yeah.
is, if we've got ice hockey fans listening, that's the big, amazing trophy that the NHL gives out at the end of it's not even the NHL playoffs, it's the Stanley Cup playoffs. Stanley Cup predates the NHL by 25 years. It was donated by the Governor General of Canada, and the Governor General was handpicked by the Queen of England to come over and serve as our head of state. And technically, the Governor General is still the highest position in our land, higher than even the Prime Minister. And this rich English aristocrat named Lord Stanley, who then became the 16th Earl of Derby directly after serving as Canada's 6th Governor General, he came over, fell in love with ice hockey, and donated the Stanley Cup as the national ice hockey trophy of Canada.
Dang.
So my PhD research was about his, let's say, political motivations to donate the cup as an express act of nation building.
Yeah.
And this just put me into this orbit of understanding sport, the genesis of it, all the way back to the ancient Greeks, because that's who the Brits modeled themselves off of in terms of using sport as a way to effectively define the best parts of their society. And this was a big current in the 19th century, and it fused with the theory of nationalism. And then sport became this sort of vehicle of state construction in Canada, in addition to this cultural product. And that was sort of like my academic expertise, but also linking it up with, I would say, currents of intellectual thought that were changing throughout the long 19th century. So sort of like the rise and then decline of classical liberalism, and the ascendancy of big P progressivism, right and left.
Well, I don't think the average American realizes just how much the entire West is essentially built on 3 cities. It's built on Jerusalem, Athens, Rome. Like, that's where our whole dang society came from. There's a book called First Principles, I believe, that I've been reading on and off in the sauna, actually. And it goes into just how much Roman thought, like we kind of think of, kind of Jerusalem and Athens, but how much Roman philosophers really shaped the founding of the country. And Rome was really into sports, which let's come back there in a second. In 2 minutes, can you make me a fan of hockey? Because I would like to, but I grew up in West Central Illinois during the 90s Bulls era. I played basketball through college when a couple injuries, kind of ended that. And now I live in St. Louis, where hockey is big in Chicago, where I lived. It's big in St. Louis. I haven't figured out how to like it, to be honest with you. And I like baseball, which is really slow and has a low score. I just can't figure out what I'm watching in hockey. Like,
Okay.
it's an hour and a half, and there's maybe going to be 2 or 3 goals. So, like, what am I looking at the rest of the time? Like, can you make me a fan? Because actually, I would like to like this.
Have you seen a live hockey game before? Like,
Yeah,
have you gone and spectated live?
So I've gone to 2 games. The first one was a Chicago Blackhawks game in college, and we got on Sports Center back when that was a big deal in the early 2000s because there was a fight in our stands, and these 2 guys were super drunk, and one of them tried to punch the other guy in the face and missed and punched the guy's wife. Um, and then they locked arms and literally rolled down the rows like over people, which created like a 20, like there was like 20 arrests. And I kind of like, I'm 6'6", I got really long arms. I kind of did this. I was like, nobody get up, because what happened was that everybody got arrested that was out there. And so, that was bad. And then I did go to one St. Louis Blues game, and I have a severe peanut allergy. And the stadium, I had my boss's tickets, who was a season ticket holder. The stadium thought that I was a season ticket holder, and we just had the one kid at the time. So we had like our, I don't know, 14-month-old with us. And then my wife went down to the seats, and this woman was eating peanuts next to where we were sitting. And she's like, "Hey, when are you going to be done?" And the woman's like, "I eat peanuts the whole game, every game." Great. So I'm just standing there because I can't even be around peanut dust of somebody eating them. And what I just tapped security guy. I'm like, you know what? I don't even know what this is. Just put us in the cheap seats. Just go rock somebody's world that paid $22 for a ticket. Let him sit on the glass. Like, let's go. And let's just make somebody's day, right? And the guy thinking of the season ticket holder is like, oh, we can't do that. So they gave us a private suite. And so it was great because my then toddler could just toddle all around and we didn't have to worry about her. Yeah, so those are the 2 games I've seen. And maybe I just haven't watched it enough, but like, kind of help me. Can you help me fall in love with it in like 3 minutes? Like, if I watch a game this weekend, what am I looking at?
How do you fall in love with hockey? 1, go to a game and don't have any of those external distractions, and allow yourself to be
Okay.
allow yourself to be mesmerized by the sheer speed of the game. Hockey is the fastest game in the world. That's the allure. It's so incredibly fast, right?
Yeah.
So you have to appreciate speed, dynamism, intensity for their own sort of sake, but then also to appreciate the coordination that goes along with it, and the power and the strength of these ice hockey players. I would say, when we're thinking about why you would fall in love with the sport, certainly there's like the physical motions, but I think one of the things that gravitate us towards the sports that we like are the internal virtues of the people that excel within them. So I would say, when you watch hockey, look for things like loyalty. Look for things like self-sacrifice. Hockey is the sport where people conceal injuries and go out and play despite being absolutely hurt.
Yeah.
Like, it's the opposite of every other sport in that sense, where you show loyalty to your teammates by fighting through injury. And the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs is amazing for this because everybody is injured.
Yeah.
Like, you get to hear, like, one of the ones that sticks out from maybe the last 15 years is Patrice Bergeron, who's a center who played for the Boston Bruins. And one of the playoffs, he played with a punctured lung.
Oh my gosh.
And broken ribs.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And. So these are the toughest guys. They're the toughest athletes, and they're fiercely loyal to each other. They're fiercely loyal to each other. So the scrums, the fighting, this is all about like pack mentality. This is all about, we're in it together. You come after one of us, you're going to fight all of us. Because the game of hockey is so incredibly aggressive. It's so fast. It's also a sport that's played within a confined area. There's no escape in hockey. Like, football's tough, but if I don't want to get hit in football, I can run out of bounds or I can slide on the ground. You want to try to run out of bounds in hockey? Where do you go? Right up against the glass to get destroyed. You cannot, there's no escape. And you have weapons in your hands, you have weapons on your feet. The game breeds aggression, therefore it demands loyalty. And I would just ask you to think about the harmony between like a ballet dancer and a boxer, and that's what hockey is. Hockey
That
is
is
this
really
beautiful, it's this beautiful harmony between incredible skill,
yeah.
creativity, imagination, and sheer physical domination, willpower, grit, and determination. You got the one guy who can stick handle and deke and pull off all the fancy moves, but a big bruising defenseman who's just looking at your chest is about to send you to the ice. Right?
Dang.
And you got to figure out how to maneuver it. And then you shoot a puck 90 miles an hour at this goalie who's in battle armor, whose sole job is to stand there and get smoked. Goalies, think about like a catcher,
Yeah.
right? That's like a goalie. Goalie's like the catcher, except for he's also in this aggressive match, and he's the only person that doesn't get to fight back. So he's got to eat pucks. He's got to eat sticks. He's got to eat skates. He's got to eat everything and just keep eating pain. Like everything in hockey is about sacrifice and speed and loyalty, but also like dynamism and imagination. So when you watch hockey, look for those things. Don't worry about the rules.
Yeah.
Don't worry about like offsides or icings or the penalties. Just look at the emotion. And the best thing to do is maybe not watch a regular season game, but tune into the playoffs. Tune into the the NHL playoffs, where they go after the greatest sports trophy in the world, the Stanley Cup, that all players are literally willing to like give away their bodies in order to get their names on this thing.
Well, and that is a crazy tradition. It's beautiful because isn't it like they cut a chunk off the Stanley Cup every year and replace it with another piece that's got all the guys' names on it? And
yep,
that's how it. So basically, it's like it is an evolved version of the original Stanley Cup, right? Because they just kind of keep remaking it.
Yeah, and like yeah. So there's actually 3 Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
The original one that Lord Stanley donated, which was a 25-pound silver punch bowl that he bought from England. 25 pounds in 1892, right? So it's good chunk of change. That one is so brittle because it was disabused by everybody. It's like the team wins it in 1899 and they're like, they leave it on the side of the road as their one automobile that takes them all like to the gala breaks down, and they leave it on the side of the road, and they got to go back 2 days later to pick it up, sort of thing. Like this thing is just like brittle. And so there's been 2 versions of the Stanley Cup that are so badly damaged that they can't be used. And so the one we have now is actually the 3rd iteration. And the cup is the thing on the top. And you're right, the trophy is a growing, living trophy, because when you win the trophy, you get your name on it. And what happens is the bands, they realized we can't just keep growing this thing forever. I think it's like 40 pounds. Like it's huge. It's giant. So you win and you get your name on it, which is one of the reasons why people want it. And that evolved out of mythology, effectively. One of the teams that won it decided to etch their names inside of the original silver bowl when they won it, because it became proper. You got to keep the cup as long as you were the champion, but the second you lost, you had to give it to the other team that won. Like the Stanley Cup originated as what's known as a challenge cup. So there were 2 trustees who were in charge of this thing, and they were the ones who set the matches. So you would imagine you have teams from all across Canada writing letters to these 2 guys in Ottawa to ask permission and say, hey, we think we're worthy enough to challenge for the National Ice Hockey Championship of Canada. And sometimes there would be 2 or 3 matches in a year, and the cup would change hands. So getting your hands on the cup is only ever a temporary thing. Like you never get to own it. Everybody gets a replica.
Yeah.
But it's not like in baseball where they'll make you a replica of the big trophy of the World Series, and then next year they're going to make a new trophy. It's the same trophy over and over, and you give it back. And you give it back.
I do understand as well. You're talking about speed, power, all this stuff. I got a brutal lesson in hockey being the only sport where you have to master another sport, which is ice skating, before you can do the sport.
Correct.
So I think it was like right when our youngest was, maybe she was an infant, and I took my 3 or 4 year old at the time, like my wife stayed home with the baby, and our oldest really wanted to go ice skating. And I was like, sure. Well, there's a kind of famous outdoor rink in St. Louis. And I didn't realize we were going on the same day that there was like 250 Afghan refugees that were kind of getting their intro to St. Louis that had just moved here. And so I am 6.5 feet tall, which doesn't lend itself to great balance naturally. Like I played tall people stuff, right? I was a swimmer, which, that's a good tall person thing. And I was a basketball player and then a basketball player in college. And I was like, oh, how hard can this be? I'd roller skated before. And so I take my 3-year-old on the ice, or 4-year-old, however old she was. She loses her mind, terrified, because she can't stay up. And then I realized I can't skate either, even though I'd roller skated, as a kid in the roller rink. And it's packed. And so we are literally like hanging on to the wall. And she's like, I want to quit. I was like, sweetie, daddy can't even move. I can't carry you. She's like, carry me. I can't pick you up or we're both going to fall down. Probably took us 30 minutes just to pull ourselves along the wall. And after that, it's like, people do this that is insane. Like, I will never see the Winter Olympics the same again, where people can like do, the figure skating and stuff. I was absolutely blown away. Okay. You sucked me in pretty well there. And man, that was, I almost just want you to be like, just start a sports like commentary stream where like the UFC did a thing where they did a casual commentary thing a few years ago with Snoop Dogg. It was like, hey, if you're less of a UFC fan and you just want to hear somebody say cool stuff, just tune into Snoop Dogg. He's probably baked out of his mind to just hear him do whatever. Man, that was brilliant. I do think that there's something as well with, it's Mike Tyson and Jake Paul tonight. And this feels like the biggest, outside the Super Bowl, this actually feels like the biggest sports event probably of like the last year. Because you've got if you want to talk about the symbolism and the poetry of it, you've got a 58-year-old that is somehow looks like he's 28, fighting like an actual 27 or 28-year-old. And it seems like the bigger question there is, how long can you be at your peak? Because it certainly looks like this guy is somehow at his peak. Like I said, I was 40. I turned 42 this week. I watched him fight when I was 8 years old. Side note, they just released an image of the new Predator movie. I'm like, all of the best of elementary school somehow back this week for me, which is crazy. You got a prediction here, and then, kind of what do you see and why this is such a cultural milestone?
No prediction. I'm a historian. Don't ever ask me to
you don't go forward
to predict the future. This is like one of the very first rules we learn. Okay, is historians don't make predictions. So I won't make a prediction. I will say that it's a very intriguing, I would say, reverberation from the Roman period that you were talking about. So
yeah,
the Roman experience of sport is spectacle with the specific aim of distraction, right? And the biggest spectator sports of all time existed in the Roman Empire, right? Like you're talking Circus Maximus. You're talking 250,000 people slamming into the mile-long arena in Rome every single Saturday for free.
250,000.
250,000 people in Circus Maximus, a mile long stadium, if you can imagine.
Dang. And what were they watching there?
Chariot racing.
Okay, that was chariot racing. Okay.
Everybody thinks it's the gladiators because obviously like the gladiators are very dramatic, but and we had the movie Gladiator in like 2000 or 2001, and that's sort of
the new one's out this weekend, or it's out now.
Yeah.
I heard I heard that there's a scene where you can see somebody reading a newspaper, which printing press wasn't invented for like another 1600 years or something horrible.
You sort of just mentioned that like we got a new Predator movie, and it's like Hollywood has basically just been out of creative and original ideas for at least the past decade, or possibly even more. And I'm sick of sequels and prequels and all this crap. Original. Give me something original, please. Not just a rehash of something else, which is just boring at this point. No, but think back to something, maybe if we're talking about cinema, think about something like Ben-Hur, right? And the drama of the chariot race. Like that was the thing that the Romans loved. And the thing that elevated chariot racing over gladiator contests was the team aspect. So there were teams, racing colors. the fans of the Greens versus the fans of the Reds, for example. And these were tied onto political factions. So you like this group of senators, you like that group of senators. Oh, you cheer for the Reds, you cheer for the Greens. Street violence, riots. Like, it was insane what the passions of the chariot racing did to the spectators.
Yeah.
And this was a calculation on the part of the state as a way to, hey, people, you guys used to be citizens. You used to have voting rights. We used to be a republic. Hey, guess what? We're an empire. You don't have any of that, but we're going to entertain you. That's where the circus comes from in the famous bread and circuses from Juvenal.
Dang.
And American sporting culture, it's kind of like animated by the ideals of the Greeks, which is like, we play sports for character development. We play sports to bring out our best potential, which is certainly the vein that I'm certainly interested in. But we have the spectacle. The spectacle is the thing that dominates the sporting landscape more than anything. Like, you look at the Super Bowl, for example, which you talked about. This is the greatest American export in the world, and it's entertainment, it's consumption, and it's football. And it's all wrapped up into one nice little package. And when people talk badly about sports, and I know it's a little tangent off of the sort of the Mike Tyson and the Jake Paul thing, they're talking about it's distracting me from more important things, right? Like I care too much about my fantasy team. I care too much about the prop bets. I care too much about the tasty food and the alcohol that I'm going to be consuming at the sporting events. I don't care about the motions of the bodies. I don't care about the skill and the talent of the athletes. I don't care about the matching strategic philosophies of one side versus the other. Like, I'm not sucked into the drama of the actual event.
Yeah.
I'm sucked into the spectacle. And something like the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight, I think, is a good example of the spectacle. But also, you do have somebody like yourself who is expressing, I'm interested to see the drama. I'm interested to see these two narratives collide. I want to see the clash of skill. I want to see the contest play out because I value the arena as a crucible, right?
Yeah.
You could care less if it's broadcast on Netflix. You could care less to watch it with a party of 50 of your friends where you're getting hammered. You're interested in the actual event. And whenever somebody is watching sport for that reason, we need to celebrate that. That's like listening to your favorite artist. That's like looking at a beautiful painting in an art gallery. To me, sport has this artistic appreciation, this artistic quality to it, but it can only be revealed if I have the right intention when I go to watch it, right? And I think most people are just too distracted by the spectacle when it comes to sport that they are distracted away from that internal, I just really love watching ice hockey. I just really love basketball, right? And I see the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson thing as a bit of a symptom of that. As a bit of a symptom of the spectacle overtakes the value. The spectacle overtakes the meaning. The spectacle overtakes the drama. So I'm not going to try to take anything away from the combatants or the opponents or for the individuals who are really interested in the boxing. My message is more directed to the people who I'm interested in the party. I'm interested in the lulls. I think that's a debauched kind of sporting culture, and it's a little bit more related to that Roman ideal of circus. And what I would like for us to consider is more of the Greek ideal or the Athenian ideal of the temple.
Yeah.
When it comes to sport.
Well, and I know you've kind of shared on Twitter before that it's like it connects you across time. It kind of marks the calendar. So one of the craziest kind of sporting things of my family is that my great grandfather actually ran a local baseball league on the farm, like Field of Dreams minus the ghosts. And people would show up in like a horseback and wagon to come play on Sunday afternoons. And I know this is crazy, right? This is crazy. And unfortunately, the baseball diamond did not survive the Great Depression because they had to plant that ground because, there just wasn't enough income to keep land being used just for fun. And my great grandparents followed the St. Louis Cardinals in the newspaper, free radio. being a baseball fan meant that you read the stat lines. If you could imagine getting the newspaper and just looking at a graph and like somehow you're reconstructing in your head to where this is exciting, which is really cool, really cool. But you know, like when my family goes to we live about 15 minutes from the Cardinal Stadium at the moment. When we go to a game, I kind of feel all that, you know, it's like, this is that same thing.
Yep. Yeah. There's a romance in baseball, especially in America. That's America's national pastime. That's the sport. It's the first sport in America that was like a uniquely solely American thing, and then promoted as this amazing American invention and to generate particular American qualities in the people that played it. It was, dude, it's so crazy. For people out there, there was a blue ribbon commission. It was called the Mills Commission. Is after Abraham Mills, who I believe was the president either of the American League or the National League. And baseball clearly comes from English bat and ball games. In particular, it's very closely related to a game like Rounders. But the Americans, like at the turn of the 20th century, were so fierce about this American identification of baseball that the Mills Commission sent out a broadside to all the baseball enthusiasts in the United States. We need proof that baseball's not related to anything English. We want any sort of proof that it's just American. And this is where one of the great myths of baseball comes. We get a letter. A letter comes in from a man named Abner Graves. And Abner Graves tells of a story of a man named Abner Doubleday, who wrote down the rules of baseball in a place called Cooperstown, New York. And this predated any of the other evidence. Abraham Mills gets this one letter. He's like, boom, we got proof. We have absolute proof now that baseball was made in America and is a solely American thing. So much so, where's the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum located? In Cooperstown. What's the Memorial Stadium named in Cooperstown? It's Doubleday Field. Problem is, it's a lie. It's not true. The date of the letter corresponds to the time when Abner Doubleday was stationed in the United States military hundreds of miles away from Cooperstown, New York. It's a fabrication. It's not real. None of it's real. But none of it's real. It's all fake. So the letters are not real. The evidence isn't real. But the drive within the American baseball community to make sure that this thing was solely only American meant that they didn't care about the truth. They just wanted to preserve the legend. They wanted to preserve the mythology. And like baseball, it really is an American invention. It's a New York City invention. It's a New York City game. It's an urban response to industrialism that tries to recapture the magic of that field that you were just talking about with was your grandparents or great-grandparents.
Yeah, my great-grandparents,
There's a specific reason why there's no clock in baseball, which is one of the reasons I hate what they just did last year by bringing a clock into baseball.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm trying to compose all my thoughts because I get really amped up about this, as you can see. The whole point of baseball is a reaction against industrialism. So people went from living these agrarian, ruled by the seasons lifestyles to being shuffled into these brand new cities and then being dominated by the clock down to like the second, where it's like I punch in and I work my 10 hours and I got to hit the 9:15, I got to hit the 10:20 trolley in order to get home. Like, and now everything I do is measured directly by the clock, and it's driving me crazy. And I just need some green space, and I need to revert back to play. I need to revert back to this agrarian feel and lifestyle. So I'm going to go play baseball. Wow. Baseball doesn't have a clock. Baseball is an innings dominated game. The nature of baseball is that it can last forever. The game technically it never has to end. It never has to end, but it can't be like boring and drawn out and genteel like cricket, because that's English and that's snooty and it's aristocratic, and we're Americans and we demand dynamism and vigor and speed. And so we have baseball, which is like a 3-hour fast-paced version of cricket, which real man play, right? Like, and it's this American expression of themselves, trying to find themselves through sport, which is why when you go to any baseball field in America, it's just different. It's just different, and you have that romance that's just oozing from like the stands and the bleachers and the lines on the field and the sound of the ball hitting the bat. It's like everything. It's like everything.
And it's funny because it connects so much, and there's so much other American story in there. So in Chicago, the Cubs and the White Sox, obviously kind of a historic rivalry, etc. And I have a theory there that I haven't seen anybody else play out, but Irish and Italians were kind of the, I guess, unfavored minorities at one, because they were different immigrant waves. By the way, let me come back to that. Have you ever heard the theory on just looking? You can figure out who the dominant immigrant group is in the United States by decade by just looking at who the boxing champion is. You ever heard that before or no? Yeah. So it's like you can see like it goes like Jewish, Irish, Italian, and then eventually like Hispanic or whatever. Because boxing is a thing you do when like what the heck? You have no money. It's a sport that anybody can get into. They can go to the top. You just got to show up and do it. And so it's the sport of people that don't have much of a shot. And so you can just look at who the champions are and you can see the history of the United States of who's coming in. The thing about Chicago is that there was kind of historically been bad blood between the Irish and Italian immigrants. Part of that was kind of rural versus urban lifestyle. The other part was kind of probably competing for limited jobs. There used to be signs that said like dogs, Irish and Italians need not apply, right?
Jewish people too. Jewish people too.
Yes. And so the way the fandom is split out, like the Irish tend to be more White Sox fans, the Italians tend to be more Cubs fans, and it's like this history of this other thing that transferred into baseball that's still going.
Well, it's very similar to the way I was describing the Reds and the Greens from the Roman period. Yeah, it's like team affiliation runs deep in culture and local cultures, right? Which is why these things are not to be trivialized. Like sports are not to be trivialized because they're extraordinarily powerful in animating people's lives with meaning and purpose. We just want that meaning and purpose to be tied to the heart and to the best of that individual's potential, as opposed to like tribal mentalities and like my group's better than your group because I wear a pinstripe that's black and you wear a pinstripe that's blue, right? Yeah. like sports become a stand-in for tribalism, obviously, but the fact that they're so obvious and they're so passionate should alert people to their power, to their deep power, right? The fact that you get like the ultras in Italy, right? You're talking about like the soccer hooligans, for example, right? Like you go and you tell those people sport don't matter. Like, come on now, people. Come on. Like, that's the thing that animates their almost like their entire existence of who they are and their identities. And it's very similar to this idea of like the underclass. Yeah. It's like when people don't have power in their own lives, they latch on to any way that they can gain power. And sports is this powerful voyeuristic mechanism to assume the power of people, to assume the power of talented and skilled people. This is why you hear sports fans all the time talking about our team or we won, right? It's like you just want to associate yourself with something great when you're not able to realize that in your own life. And my message is like, go on and start realizing it. Like you have the power in your own life to go out, make magic with your own body in any kind of an athletic context, whether you're running a 14-minute mile or you're like getting drafted into the pros. It doesn't matter. The power of sport to teach us about our own internal greatness and excellence and potential is open and available to all of us. And I want adults to deeply internalize that by continuing to play sports. And stop just watching them. That's my problem, is that people just watch sports. I have no problem with you watching sports if you're also playing them.
That's a great line, because what winds up getting, I think there's the kind of rise of like red pill content, to where everything has to be in, kind of hustle culture online, everything has to be misery and grind and all this stuff. I'm like, that's going to burn itself out, because people are just eventually, I think we're kind of already in the tail end of that, because people realize like, do I need to be miserable my whole dang life? And in the United States in particular, the NFL in particular is kind of associated with like beer gut, sit there for 14 hours and eat chips and, drink Miller Lite. And I'm like, I don't think that's the NFL's fault that some of their fans do that. I would say it's probably the other 6 days a week that need to change. Not that you're watching TV for 3.5 hours or whatever. Like, the NFL is not preventing you from going to the gym on Monday morning before work. That's putting a little too much on one thing.
No, but it's that idea of voyeurism, right? It's like a substitution for my own life. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I use the accolades of other people in a substitute for what I am not achieving in my own life. When I think about watching sports, I want to be inspired to go out and do something myself. It's like when I listen to music, I want to be inspired to go pick up a guitar, which I did, start a band, which I did, make records, which I did. I want to use art as inspiration. I don't want to subject what I view as a high value in society and culture to a low value, which is cheap entertainment. Entertainment's great, but that's not a high value. That's not where our lives should be aimed at. Our lives should be at creating, not consuming. So start moving, go do something. That's the message. You create, you make the art. You bring beauty into the world, and then you're going to start to see the athletes on the TV screen in a totally different light than just these avatars for your entertainment and pleasure. They're not object. It's a Kantian idea. We shouldn't use other people as means towards our own ends, right? Yeah. You almost dehumanize the athlete when you solely subject them towards your entertainment, and that's just a part of the spectacle. You know what I mean? It's like people oh, I hope Jake Paul gets KO'd and has to be taken to the hospital, and Mike Tyson walks the floor and paralyzes him. It's like, well, what kind of a person wishes that upon another person?
Yeah, that's
if not just to get my rocks off on watching somebody else suffer.
And I've never been that upset, even though I would say, baseball, NBA, pretty big part of my life, kind of for my whole life, right? I've never been able to not get out of bed the next day because oh, that went bad. It's I'm bummed, for a couple hours. But again, I think that's where I think that a lot of the pushback on sports in American culture probably comes from a lot of the baby boomer parents that raised Gen X and millennials that were really grumpy and probably came out of a different era where there was a lot more manufacturing and kind of middle management, white collar jobs that they hated. And it was this is my one respite from the rest of my, just grind of 50 hours of work. It's this is the only thing that distracts me. And so therefore I'm going to ignore my wife and kids. Well, I consume this thing. And then if it doesn't go my way, I'm going to be really grumpy. And it's oh, I totally understand that. But what you're mad at is, unfortunately, your parents not doing their job, not the Kansas City Chiefs.
It's true. It's an abdication of your own responsibility and obligation, right? Which is why I'm using words like distraction and voyeurism. It's you're substituting your own ability to affect your own reality by choosing to escape, right? That's sport is a form of escapism, which I think is also dangerous. What I want people to recognize is that sport is this place of ultimate truth, right? Sport is this place of ultimate truth. And that's the type of thing you want to be gaining from it. Truth about drama, truth about narrative, truth about yourself. One of the reasons why I want people to play sports and to play sports that they are interested in, right, is because it's a window to self-knowledge. It's a window to eventual self-mastery, and this idea that I can use sport to become a better person. I coach on an endurance training team where our athletes are training for ultra marathons, 50-mile races, 100-mile races, Ironman triathlon, 70.3, right? These races that take 6 hours to do, but then how do you train for that? What's the demand? You're looking at people who are training 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 hours a week. And the stereotype that a lot of people have for those people, and they're not wrong, is that these people hate their families, they hate their lives, and they do the training to escape them, which is for a lot of people, I think, true, and it's detrimental. But my focus and the focus of our team is the opposite. It's we do the training so that we can become better people. We do the training so that we can become better husbands, better wives, better fathers, better mothers, better employers, better employees, better entrepreneurs, better writers, like whatever it is I'm trying to do in my life, I want the training and the competing to enhance that. And I want to aim my training particularly towards that kind of personal growth. And the word I always use is transcendence, because I'm trying to get back to that idea of sport with the temple, which comes from the ancient Greeks, right? For the ancient Greeks, sport was a spiritual endeavor. It was related to religious festivals in praise of their gods, right?
Yeah.
The ancient Olympics take place at the foot of Mount Olympus. And who lives at the top of Mount Olympus? The Olympian gods. And what do all the athletes do before they compete in the Olympics? They go in front of the statue of Zeus in the temple of Zeus, which is one of the ancient wonders of the world, and they swear that they're only going to compete like for the sole reason of gaining what the Greeks called arete, which is like the most excellent virtue, like to realize the best parts of themselves. And what would the ancient Olympians win? Nothing. They would win an olive crown. They would win an olive crown that went on the top of their head, but dissolved and disintegrated and was done into dust the next day, as if to suggest, that's really cool, you made this achievement, but you got to start again and go harder.
Yeah.
Right? You don't just get to win and then like coast on your laurels. You got to get right back to work the next day. Keep getting better. Keep improving. Keep struggling. Keep sacrificing. Keep rising to your own potential. Like that's what I'm interested. That's what I'm interested in.
That's great, because it's the one of the things that you see so much anxiety and depression and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's because DoorDash and Netflix. You don't have any. You gotta have some kind of misery to offset what's going on in your life. Like, when I think about growing up on a farm, some of the happiest days were the worst ones. Like I look back and I think about stacking like square bale hay. I don't know if you guys do that up there. But basically you just follow a wagon and you pick up the hay bales and you stack them, and it's so dang hot and it's miserable, and then you go in a barn and you just inhale all this crap into your lungs. I think about that, and I think about cutting firewood in the winter. Again, pretty miserable endeavors. Those are the best times with some of my childhood friends and cousins, and it was honestly wonderful because it was awful. And then if you get to go flop on the couch then and drink hot chocolate and watch a movie, everything is more beautiful.
You earned it.
Yeah, you did.
Right? Like this, I like what you're saying right now about like this red pill, like doomsday, everything's got to suck. Like, because we saw what this week, like Dr. Jordan Peterson, he put it that tweet about like the meaning of life is suffering. And then it's like all you're supposed to do is like feel pain and suffer.
I didn't see that.
The best he put this tweet out. It's like the meaning of life is suffering, and the best you can do is to figure out like it was really bad. It was like and people were like, what, no happiness, no joy? And it's like, I'm just gonna put a little bit of Aristotle right in here for you, my guy. Like it's like the meaning of life is happiness, to find a righteous value to the struggle. You don't just suffer for the sake of suffering. That means you're miserable. Like the way Jordan Peterson lives, clearly, like a life of misery. Dude, like I was one of the first Jordan Peterson acolytes. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. Because before he made it big, what did he make his living doing? He made his living criticizing woke academics in Canada, which is like my realm. I remember replaying, like there's a debate Jordan Peterson had over Bill 16 where he debated these two female profs. Yeah. And I watched it maybe like 12 times. Like I loved him. I went and I attended his biblical lecture series in Toronto. I got my university to actually pay for all my tickets. Big win.
Oh, nice.
So I was a big fan of his, but it's like Jordan Peterson's advice of like clean your room, like go to the gym, bro. Clean your room and go to the gym. You forgot that part, Jordan Peterson. And that's why you have this like life that is so clearly miserable to you, and why you're never happy. Like, I'm not interested in following the psychological advice as someone who doesn't have any joy. Like,
that's pretty legit. My wife and I did go see him on Valentine's Day in St. Louis this year. And I will say, apart from the actual content, one of the things I realized is, first of all, I was physically miserable because the seats were just really narrow and I'm so tall. I was like, I'm so uncomfortable sitting in this seat. Like my legs don't have anywhere to go. But I realized, I was like, okay, so this is a good time, tickets were $50, $60 or whatever. We got the cheap seats. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, I probably would have enjoyed this more as a podcast doing dishes. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's probably more my learning style anyway. I will say that the Jordan Peterson thing probably was one of the two things that was the beginning of the end of my journalism career in the entertainment space, because the rest of the staff had gotten so far politically left. I proposed, I was writing for a magazine called Relevant that was, I don't know, 7-8 million readers a week at that time. And I had proposed, because it was kind of faith and culture, like kind of evangelical Christian magazine. I had proposed something on that lecture series because it was starting to blow up on YouTube. And they were like, Jordan Peterson's far right, blah, 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 blah. Shortly thereafter, I wrote that we had a segment called like Hear Me Out. And I wrote a piece about how the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie maps onto the American Revolution. Basically, Jack Sparrow is a stand-in for Benjamin Franklin because Benjamin Franklin had this very peculiar style of dress and was very, over the top. And then the John Adams and Abigail Adams like worked together so much. Abigail Adams was really one of the founding thinkers that created the United States. And so Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley's characters like go on to them. And just the fact that it was like mildly pro-America, that my editor left, and then an editor who was just a complete nut job on Twitter took over. And shortly thereafter, like after 13 years, I got no more writing assignments. So, Jordan Peterson, probably my pitch of that story probably cost me that.
Yeah. I mean,
you're the first person that I've heard say that like, I will say that I like his podcast sometimes. His books are honestly such a slog.
they're tricky.
Yeah. I mean, there's good stuff there. But yeah, I won't ever go see him again live because it wasn't fun at all. Like,
it was really, those first lecture series were so much fun though. Like,
were they?
Well, before he got big, man.
Yeah.
Before he got big, it was amazing, dude. It was so cool. You'd walk outside after the lecture hall and there'd be people that had like flown from Brazil to see him. And he was basically like Plato or Aristotle. He'd just sit for an hour outside talking with people like who had come to visit him. It was amazing. There was this really amazing energy. And then he just like got swallowed up by the storm. He got swallowed up by the sea. He couldn't take any of his own advice and apply it to himself, which is one of like it's kind of like a big signal, like, not great. Like, and I feel bad for the guy, like, because I wish he had just focused his aim a little bit more as opposed to just like letting popularity take over. Like,
yeah,
it's clear that kind of got to his head, and I don't blame him. I mean, all of us would have probably done worse, if we became an international celebrity overnight and you're this unknown psychology professor and then you're being invited onto all of the biggest shows in the world.
Yeah.
With it, like, so it's not a person. I'm not trying to personally attack the guy, but this idea like that life is just meant to be this slog and I'm not supposed to be happy. No, dude, like joy and love and kindness and gratitude, these are foundational. And truly like the most important elements of our lives. And that doesn't mean it's easy. Happiness isn't ease. Happiness is doing something difficult and then recognizing it provides value to you and other people and that you're making a difference and you're moving towards the goal. Like, it's just, it could probably just boil down to some semantic argument, as most of the debates tend to. We just define terms incorrectly and then we talk past each other forever. But I see a lot of that type of an ideology impact the way people view physical exercise. Physical exercise is punishment for me eating too many sweets. Physical punishment should suck. It should hurt. I should brutalize myself. It's serious business. The only thing I should do is go to the gym, lift weights, be rote, be mechanistic, go after the objective measures, right? And I should subject the whole endeavor to wanting physical health. And no.
I will say, so I kind of built out like a kettlebell and like boxing workout gym for the summer, and it's getting cold enough now that I rejoined a gym. Also, kind of just for the childcare, just because our kids are little, and I'm like, it's $40 a month to get somebody to watch my kids for an hour and a half a day when I need it is also helpful for just
Amazing.
kind of for the mental break, right?
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah. And so I just went back to the gym for the first time last night. And man, what I realized is, first of all, most people on treadmills are watching TV. So they're kind of trying to escape what they're doing anyway. And then they get in there. I try to do about 20 minutes of sauna a day just because honestly, that was harder than the workout last night. I hadn't done sauna in like 4 months or 6 months. Just dealing with the heat is painful. And most people do, try to do 10 minutes. I try to do 20 to 30, work up to it. And I tell you what, man, I used to take a Kindle in because I like to read and I'd rather cook the battery on a $50 Kindle that I can buy a replacement on Facebook Marketplace than a phone and earbuds and smartwatch and all this other crap that are their batteries being destroyed. And people can't sit for 10 minutes in the heat without YouTube and, or Hulu or whatever it is. And I'm like, so you're escaping your whole life all the time, even when this thing that's supposed to be giving you energy, you're trying to get away from it. Like, just be in the thing.
They don't want to do it.
They
They don't
don't.
want to do it because they view it as a form of punishment, and nobody wants to take their medicine. Nobody wants to take their medicine. But if you view it as a form of expression, now you're talking about something that's completely different. Now it's tethered to my heart. Now it's not this millstone around my neck that's tethered to my rational brain, which creates shortcuts and falls for excuses. My heart is like on fire with passion, and it will move through whatever adversity you put in front of it in order to get what it deserves and in order to get what it desires. Like, love's the most powerful force in the world because it allows people to sacrifice the most valuable things willingly and enthusiastically.
Yeah.
So expression comes from the heart, creativity comes from the heart. So move from your heart. Move as a way to express yourself, and all of a sudden it's no longer punishment. Now it's like any other craft or any other artistic skill. Like, if I want to be able to play a good song on the guitar, I have to callus up my fingers so that I don't bleed all over the fretboard.
Yeah.
I've got to strengthen my hands so that they can stretch, so I can make the chords and I can hit the arpeggios and I can move across the scales so that I can express the beautiful music that's in my soul. It's exactly the same thing with our bodies. That's what I want people to understand. Your body can be this powerful form of expression that's related to your passion, interest, and purpose. And when you do that, exercise is not this punishment. It's this place where I go to find out who I am and to realize myself in the present moment.
Yeah. Let's land the plane on kind of talking about endurance sports and how people can get involved in something like that. Because I just love to see people go do something. There is actually, it's like kind of Irish field hockey, and I don't have time for this one. It's called hurling, maybe?
Hurling.
Yeah. So there's like a hurling club by me. With the age of my kids, just, being out like 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon is kind of not where I want to be. Because I want to be with them on the weekends, right? And, I want to be with my wife and I want to be doing stuff. But man, I just I will, it's near a playground we go to. And I'm like, those people are so dang happy. One of the cooler things about being in the Chicago suburbs when I was up there is I played in an adult dodgeball league.
There you go.
It's a terrible tall person sport because you're just targeted.
I was going to say there's a lot of real estate to hit there.
Yeah. But you're an ultra runner yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you do triathlons? I can't remember from Twitter.
I don't. I used to do bike and swim and run just as modalities, just as things I'd liked to do, but I didn't have anybody to do them with in my 20s, so I never actually have done a triathlon. And then I just moved into trail running, and I basically just do trail running at this point.
Gotcha. I did the first 2/3 of the Ironman when I was like 25. The morning I flew to California, and it wasn't Iron branded. It's gone now. It was a full triathlon in Sonoma County. The morning of the race, the hotel was out, or the elevator was out at the hotel, and I was carrying my bike down the stairs in a pair of Crocs. I know that they weren't cool then. It was just their good like swimmer shoes. And my Crocs slipped off and I fell down a flight of stairs and sprained my ankle. And I was like, I'm going to be okay. I got out of the water and I couldn't walk. And so they taped up my ankle to a 90-degree angle and actually finished the 112-mile bike. And then I went to the emergency room, and nothing in the whole world was as scary after that. So in a way, I didn't finish it, but it was cool because something really cool happened. And then oddly enough, like that I don't have as much interest in that world now. But I had gotten back to kind of in the endurance sports world. Do you know about the tactical games or kind of that tactical endurance shooting stuff?
No.
So it's all stuff that your prime minister would be very upset about. The tactical games is a regional event that I was training for, and then my dog ran into my knee that I blew out in college basketball, and I couldn't run for like 2 months, so I had to drop out. I have a very large dog, a very large person with a very large dog, a Great Pyrenees mix. He's 6 feet on his hind legs, so he's a beast. He went to bark at another dog and drove my right knee straight back. He literally ran his head into my knee when I was walking him. But so I did the triathlon thing, and I don't have as much interest now. But the tactical games are, you're actually in a full plates. So, kind of think bulletproof tactical soldier's vest. And it's a series of challenges, to where like the longest one is you run 3 miles and then you drop, to the ground and you take 30 rifle shots. And so every one you miss is an additional 10 seconds on your time. So it's like tire flips, shoot, sandbag drags, shoot. And so I was really pumped on that. And I grew up hunting and shooting, and I really like that stuff anyway. But the triathlons just weren't as appealing to me. And I found something that was cool and novel that kind of combined other things I liked. So I'm like, oh, that looks fun. So would you say that some people, you just got to kind of find the thing that piques your interest? Like I think endurance sports are good for everybody because they open up your mind, right? But sometimes you just gotta find the thing.
I think endurance sports are helpful for everybody because our lives are basically one giant endurance event. So it maps nicely. Like the virtues that you gain in an endurance sport really map nicely to the types of courage that you're going to need just to go through your own life. Day to day, month to month, week to week, year to year. So I think endurance sports have something to offer to everybody. But what you said there about finding something that's fun is the most important thing. Like fun is your internal signal. Fun is your internal signal to what's interesting to you. And it's also a place that directs you to what's easy. Like a lot of our own disposition, right? The thing that makes us uniquely us is our ability to do hard things that are easy for us, right? So for me, it's like, I love reading. I love writing. I love synthesizing complex abstract ideas into a coherent narrative. So it makes sense that I easily moved into becoming a history PhD. And when other people say to me, oh my gosh, I could never do that. That's really hard. And I say, yeah, it was never hard for me.
Yeah.
That just is a signal that it was the correct path for me to go because I'm able now to go harder. I'm able to go deeper than somebody else who is facing so much resistance just to get started. I can probe deeper. So fun and interest are actually a signal for us to go towards difficulty and adversity that other people are not equipped to do. It's like an internal signal of the individual hero's journey that we all have to go on, right? So my biggest advice for anybody out there, if you want to live easily what I'm talking about, fun. Fun is your first signal. Fun is primary. If it's not fun, it's not going to last and you're going to hate it and it's going to be punishment. And all you're going to have to be able to rely upon is discipline. And it's that negative bullying discipline where it's like that teacher who only yelled at you or that coach who made you do wind sprints no matter how well you played.
Well, and that's
they got results, but you hated that person and you resented them. And you resented them, and you'll resent yourself too. Yourself too.
That's why good stuff.
That's why fun has to be number one, because fun activates my heart. That brings in love. That makes adversity that's up here shrink all the way down to there and makes it easy for me to move through it.
Yeah. And, I think about I'm just not, I don't know, maybe I will be at a different point in my life. I have not fallen in love. Some of my cousins are really into golf and stuff. I've never fallen in love with it.
I love golf.
Do you?
World's greatest game. The world's greatest game. The greatest game that's ever been invented ever is golf.
Okay. Give me the 30-second synopsis there before we move on.
Oh, it's just hyper real. It's the most hyper real sport. Like, it seems so simple and that you should do it, but you get more angry because you can't do it than any other sport. So the fact that your expectation of ease versus how difficult it is creates we'll call it the mental tempest inside of you that is it's like unreachable in most other sports. Golf is the one sport where everybody quits. You show up and play 18 holes and you've never gone to the driving range, you're not making 18 holes. You're not even making one hole. You're like, why can't I hit this stupid ball that's not even moving? Why can't it go straight? Why is it going left? Why is it going right? Why is it going backwards in between my feet? It's the ultimate test against self. That's why it's the best game. It's the ultimate. You can cheat in golf. You can lower your score. There's every opportunity for you to cheat and to have no integrity, but then you obviously start to miss out on the entire reason you should be doing it. It's also communal. You can play it basically until you die. So it's for the old, for the young. It's not intense physically, but it's the most intense mentally and spiritually. So I can play it every single day and not burn my body out. It's actually going to sustain my body because I'm doing like 11,000 steps and I'm outside for 4 hours. It forces me against nature. It forces me against myself. Like, I could keep going, but that was more than 30 seconds. But now I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I can't hear you. I cannot hear you.
Okay. Did it come back?
Yes, sir.
It did come back. Gosh dang. This has been the most plagued by technical errors thing. Now, just to land the plane there, that I was going to say that, you've got me interested in that again. I got our 6-year-old a recurve bow for Valentine's Day last year. And it's funny because archery is kind of the same thing in golf in some ways.
Very similar. It's the idea of aim. It's the idea of like,
yes,
all sports are calibrated and aimed effectively,
yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah. No, that's really fascinating stuff. Like what you're hitting me with there, and that just makes me want to get out and I got to get another recurve bow so I can shoot with her. Like I hunt just because I'm on public land. I hunt with a crossbow here in Missouri, so it's like just because I want more range, I have less opportunities. Like it's probably more sports to do it with a vertical bow. But I'm competing for space with other people because I don't go back to the farm I grew up on just because of time and expense and stuff. So I hunt here with a crossbow, and I'm like, I got to get a recurve bow picked up. And man, you have so much dang enthusiasm. I want to do this definitely again because I don't think we even scratched the surface. So we got to do it again in a couple months. But let's just kind of land on what you do, maybe why people should start running. I will say I was very humbled last night. My wife had an autoimmune issue this summer. She was hospitalized for, and then had her appendix out in October. And my endurance just totally got shot to hell, man. And so I started again last night, like lifting, rowing, etc. And I was just like, I kind of lost the year, but oh well, like start over again. I know I want to do something next July. I got time to get ready for it. Right. So, everybody's going to want to do this they're going to freak out about, January 3rd. And, why not just start in November? Like, I mean, we still have our Thanksgiving. You don't, but but why start running in the winter? Because that's uncomfortable. Why start when everybody's about to eat? Like, give me the why.
best self demands it. Number one. I would say something like honesty and humility is very important in this life, right? Like we always need to be reminded of truth, and we always need to be brought down a peg because we tend to overinflate our importance and our abilities. And something like running, something like lifting provides you with honest feedback, and it's knowledge. It's real self-knowledge that oftentimes we are blocked out from because we've got this powerful brain that tends to just want to make everything fit. This is why we have cognitive dissonance, right? This is why we can hold contradictory beliefs in our heads and feel like we're a comprehensive whole, because the ego effectively like determines to be right. And sport is this powerful place where we just get to like have the ego shoved down and and with honest and righteous humility. So it's like, if I tell everybody I'm gonna run 10 miles and I can only hobble 2 miles, well, guess what? I gotta live by the truth, right? Or conversely, if I'm somebody who says, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to run 2 miles, and all of a sudden, like, bam, I just smoked a local 5K. Oh, shoot, I just shattered a limiting belief that I had about myself with truthful, righteous evidence.
Yeah.
So I would say, number one, it's fun. It feels good to move your body. Like, remember the fun and the joy that you had moving around as a kid and just not caring that you were drenched with sweat because you were overtaken in the presence of the moment. One, adults need to find presence and joy. We need fun. We need play. Sport provides it to us, makes us healthy, physically fit, mentally sharp, like good for mental health, good for spiritual energy. But really what I want you to think about is, like, I want to know who I am. And I want to know what I'm capable of. And I'm not afraid to be humbled. And in fact, I want to be humbled. And endurance is particularly well suited to this because the time duration of an endurance event gives us so much chance to know ourselves and to push ourselves into these deep, dark places where we're forced to bring out something to just keep going. One of the tags in endurance, it's like the race doesn't start until the first time you want to quit. Oh, how valuable is that in my life when I'm faced with a difficult decision, where I'm faced with a crossroads, where I'm faced with external pressures to conform, that I just don't want to do. And now I've got the real life knowledge of myself that I'm courageous and brave and willing to eat pain, and it's okay to suffer and it's okay to sacrifice. I have all that inside of me, and I know I have it inside of me because I've done it. And now I can continue to do it. And I'll extend the places where I can do it. So ultimately, everybody knows they're too fat. They don't move enough. Objectively, I have bad blood pressure. I'm on medication. Great. Everyone knows that. Guess what? You're still fat. You're still not moving enough. All the objective data in the world is not going to convince you. What you need to do is activate the heart, purpose, meaning, passion. That's what's going to make it work. That's what's going to make it stick this time. We have too much information. Get rid of the information. Go with the heart. That's what you need. That's why you should start right now.
Jordan Goldstein, we're going to do this again. How do people who are not chronically on Twitter find you?
That's a good question.
If they're looking for some...
I don't have a good answer for that. I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer.
Really? You don't have a website in your bio or anything?
I had a website.
I'll link it up in the description so people can find you. Literally, you just exist on Twitter, don't you?
I had a website and I nuked it because I wasn't using it and it was costing me too much money.
You're on Instagram and stuff. So
I do have an IG. I don't really post there. I have a Substack. I'm pretty active on my Substack. That's a great place to figure it. Like, I do a lot more log form stuff. I do have a podcast, my own podcast as well, Athletic Philosopher Podcast. But Twitter is my main hub. And if anybody is in the Chicago area, I'm moving there and I'm going to be setting up a real life community. So get in contact with me via Twitter. But that's basically it. If you're interested in some of the endurance stuff, I coach on tribal training, which is run by Ryan Dreyer. So you can go to traintribal.com if you're interested in training for triathlons or endurance runs. And I'm a mindset performance coach. So Ryan does your physical programming, and I'm like the animating spirit for these ideas and how people make them alive in our tribe. I do one-on-one coaching with individuals, life coaching, fitness coaching. It's kind of like both intertwined. But the best place to get a hold of me is definitely my X profile. But definitely come say hi on Substack as well, because I'm posting usually once or twice a week there.
For sure. Jordan Goldstein, we'll do it again.
Thank you so much, Seth. And we're going to be neighbors soon. So
yeah.